Okay, so we'll be covering session 9 today. I just dropped the notes into the chat. If anyone wants to read along, I'm going to read the notes I've made for this session.
So weird. When you first put it into the chat, it said it was from BJ.
Oh.
And then I was like, wait, what? And then anyway, and then it changed. It seems like I got the hit again that it was another one of those like, oh, our friends are talking to us through our tech and you're me. So that's what I got.
Hello, friends, whoever's talking to us. Oh, hey, speaking of which, why don't I take a moment to thank our friends. Thank you to Ra, thank you to the Confederation, thank you to LL Research. Thank you to all of our higher selves who are here with us right now. So close. Thank you to all those beings that share the positive path, all those beings that seek the Creator and express the beauty of the Creator and the love and the light of the Creator, and help to co-create a beautiful future that works to the highest good of all beings. Thank you. All right, into some study. Okay, so session 9 covers the following topics and themes. First, there's a question about L&L's publishing, and then there's a question about a past life. There's comments on engaging in the healing exercises given by Ra, and the process of planetary evolution in third density as it relates to the harvest cycles. The first Earth entities, or the 4 elements. The first third density entities on Earth are from Mars. A description of the process of the Mars transfer of souls to Earth and the Guardian involvement in that process. Comments on the Guardian intervention with the Mars transfer, relation to the Law of One, and the institution of Earth quarantine. Dun, dun, dun. The bellicose nature of the Mars entities and the destruction of their atmosphere. The Mars transfer occurred 75,000 years ago. Humanoid entities have visited Earth for 4 million years. Second density life on Earth prior to third density, and the similarity of second density bipedal entities to humans, and the natural process of evolution. And then a discussion, this session closes out with a discussion of the 3 types of Bigfoot beings. So that's what we're up to today. And with all that, let's go ahead and read. Anybody want to start us off?
Sure, I'll start. Let's rock and roll. Session 9, January 27th, 1981. I'm Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of our infinite creator. We communicate now. Questioner. We are definitely going to make the Law of One the primary portion of this book. I apologize for getting sidetracked on these subjects. We are in the position of, shall we say, beating around as to what direction to go with the book to begin with. For this reason, I have asked a few questions, and probably will ask a few more questions in the early part of these sessions that will be somewhat meaningless with respect to application of the Law of One because of my own ignorance of what I'm doing. However, I expect to become more proficient rapidly while we go on. Oh, rapidly, okay. There are a couple of questions that are probably meaningless, but if I could get them out of the way, they're bothering me a little bit. Is it possible for you to suggest a publisher for this book? Ra. I'm Ra. No. Questioner. Is it possible for you to tell us of anything in our past incarnations, our past experiences before this incarnation? Ra. I am Ra. It is possible. However, such information as this is carefully guarded by your mind, body, spirit, being totally, so that your present space-time experiences will be undiluted.
May, I'm just going to pause you that, May. It's
Yeah.
mind, body, spirit, being, totality.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a portion of the self. Yep.
Thanks for
Mhm.
clarifying.
Yep.
Let us scan for harmless material for your beingness. I am, in the distortion of desire for your freedom from preconception, able to speak only generally. There have been several times when this group worked and dwelt together. The relationships varied. There is balanced karma, as you call it. Each thus is the teacher of each. The work has involved healing, understanding the uses of the earth energy, and work in aid of civilizations which called, just as your sphere has done, and we have come. This ends the material which we consider harmless. Questioner: the healing exercises that you gave to us are of such a nature that it is best to concentrate on a particular exercise at a time. I would like to ask at this time what exercise I should concentrate on. Possibly a little exercise change. Should concentrate on inaudible say tonight. I am Ra. Again, to direct your judgment is an intrusion upon your space-time continuum distortion called future. To speak of past or present within our distortion judgment limits is acceptable. To guide rather than teach learn is not acceptable to our distortion in regards to teach learning. We instead can suggest a process whereby each chooses the first of the exercises given in the order in which we gave them, which you in your discernment feel is not fully appreciated by your mind, body, spirit complex. This is the proper choice. Building from the foundation, making sure the ground is good for the building. We have assessed for you the intensity of this effort in terms of energy expended. You will take this in mind and be patient, for we have not given a short or easy program of consciousness learn teaching.
Great.
I
Thanks,
yield.
May. That's great. That's a good amount for now.
It's different than reading the Secret of Light.
Right.
I'd forgotten about the timbre, so thank you.
Yeah, no, you did great. Thanks, May. Thanks for reading. Any questions or comments on any of that?
Personally, I just love that they were reminded that they have worked together in the past. You know, the three of them. This is not the first time they've been together. I would say that those in our group have probably shared lifetimes together as well. This is not the first time we've gone around the block, so to speak. So I love that memorial, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. Scott?
What May said, and I'm really curious about the exercises because I don't remember last time around. Maybe I wasn't present, maybe I missed a session or something. I'm imagining they're gonna get into specifics about that.
Well, they have reviewed the overview of the healing and balancing exercises. Does anybody remember and want to share what those are?
Was that the one where like you start with the mind,
Yep.
and all the opposites, you balance them, accept them, then body, then
Yep.
spirit?
That's right. You remember balancing the polarities? Start with the mind, and then basically anything that comes up that gets your attention, especially things that are uncomfortable or painful. Ra encourages us to find the opposite of that quality and realize that they're connected. the thing that's uncomfortable and its opposite are part of the same oneness. And then we internalize and become balanced through step by step, piece by piece, doing that in our own minds. And then I think we also extend it to the minds of others, and then in our own bodies and in the bodies of others. Is that ringing a bell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Balancing the polarities.
The perfect union of contrary things.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, they're basically underlining or underscoring here, like, giving Don some reassurance that the process they set out is at least a lifetime's worth of work. You know, it's like Don seems to be maybe having some expectations that he'd be moving through their exercises at a pace that's not realistic. Meanwhile, it's January 27th for this session, and they just started the contact like a couple of weeks ago or something, you know, like he's getting a little ahead of himself, maybe.
The quick fix society.
Right.
I just want to ask a question to BJ, because when you're talking about balancing the polarities, it's reminiscent to me. It sounds like it's very reminiscent of the work, and I'm just wondering if that's true for you. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
The first LL homecoming gathering that Aaron and I went to, we co-led a session that we called Katie Rah Rah, that was about the overlap of Ra's teachings of the balancing exercises and the work of Byron Katie.
And just another question, do you have any classes that are active right now?
Not right now, but I'm working
Okay.
on them, and Amanda's
Okay.
helping me.
Good. That's all for me for now.
Yeah. Well, other than inquiring together, which is our twice monthly offering in the collective.
Can somebody join that at any time?
Yeah, if they join the collective. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a drop in. Yeah.
Huh? Okay, great.
Mhm.
So those sessions on the healing exercises, in session 5, Ra outlines the healing of mind and body. And in session 6, they talk about the spirit, the healing exercises for the spirit.
Great.
I think it's so sweet how Don is like, he's so humble. I mean, there's so few people, in my opinion, that could do what he did as the questioner. And, you know, come up with a coherent set of questions, be able to respond on the fly to Ra, you know, to as Ra is giving answers. Like Don just did such an amazing job. And he's, you know, he's like a little bit down on himself. He's like, you know, I'm going to stumble through this. And that's good. It's good. It's so good to be humble. You know, I appreciate his humility, and he's also so amazing. But I found it really endearing that he was saying, like, I'm going to stumble through this, and I'm not always going to focus on the law of one. And I know that's what you're here to teach, but you know, he's like strategizing about like this book and how he's going to get it published and how many people it's going to reach and what does it need to say to reach the right people. You know, he's like doing all the calculus. And meanwhile, you know, he's also aware that Ra is interested in spreading the philosophy of oneness. And he does a great job, in my opinion.
Agreed.
On this mind, body, spirit, being totality, does everybody know what that means? Does anybody not know? Does anybody want to understand that better or explore that a little bit?
I wanted to ask, that was what I was going to ask about, actually.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Well, I'm curious how it does the guarding. So I think there's like the mind, body, spirit complex, and the higher self, and the mind, body, spirit totality.
Exactly.
And so the mind, body, spirit complex is sort of just our current perception and limited wherever we are. The higher self, I think that's the 6th density. Like, and then the totality is the 7th density before it merges back into the creator.
That's right.
And I'm just curious, like, how's that information? I don't know if there's an answer, but like can Ra actually see, like, what does it mean? Like, this information is guarded by your mind, body, spirit, totality. Like, I'm just curious.
Totally.
Like,
Me too. That's a great question. Okay, so for folks who aren't fully aware of these three concepts, Ra describes these three distinct phases on our journey through the octave. So as we evolve from third density beings through, until we merge back into the one infinite creator and drop all identity, personal identity, there's three distinct kind of phases on that journey. The phase that begins in third density is what they call the mind, body, spirit complex. And then in late sixth density, we basically like go through this initiation process where we become the higher self of ourselves, of our previous selves. And the way that we do that, this is so fascinating. The way that we do that is the seventh density self that has basically completed all of its necessary experience to learn about what it's interested in learning. It's fulfilled all of its desires. It's the part of us that's like, okay, I'm done. I've done everything I need to do to experience the octave. And then once that point arrives in seventh density, we take the entire storage of our memories of that entire experience and create a resource, and then turn and give it to our sixth density self. And the sixth density self takes that resource, which is our entire memory bank of everything we'll ever experience, and uses that to be a guide for every previous version of itself, of ourselves.
Wow.
And Ra calls that the full circle of being. Those three portions of ourself make up our that's our whole being, beyond time, beyond the illusion of time. Those are the three phases that we go through. And so as I understand that, the seventh density self, the mind, body, spirit, being totality, doesn't interact with its previous selves directly, except for the process of initiating the higher self. So how does that being guard information? That's a great question, Shang. I have the same curiosity. I don't exactly know how that works, but all portions of ourselves are just like Ra. They want to guard the free will. They don't want to infringe on our free will as we're learning, because the other phrase for free will that Ra gives is the law of confusion. Confusion is incredibly important. Without confusion, we couldn't go through what we need to go through to grow. We wouldn't evolve. And evolution is the most precious thing to the creator. It's the reason why it makes the universe. And so the higher self and the mind, body, spirit, being totality, are interested in guarding our capacity to be confused. They don't want to give us too much information. They don't want to give us the answers to where we're at. And so, yeah, there's some way that they guard that. And Ra does it too. You can see it here in both of those questions. Ra's really guarding. Don asks questions, and Ra's like, well, we need to say no, because if we told you, it would take away your capacity to be confused and to know for yourself and find out for yourself. So
if I remember, the mind, body, spirit, totality is the map, like the map of everything that's possible. So maybe the guarding is like, there's just there's like no probability or possibility that you would gain that information, like in your current life. And Ra can maybe see that, and if he sees that, like, oh, you're not, like, based off your map, you're not supposed to know this, then maybe maybe Ra can read that map. I don't know. Yeah, maybe so. And it's exactly what you said, Shang, but it's for each entity. It's the full map. For each of us have one. Each of us have a storehouse of all of the experiences we either will or could have. It's basically our personal Akashic records, is how I see it. We each have a personal Akashic record, and the whole planet has an Akashic record. And in fact, I think at every level of mind, so racial mind, cosmic mind, there's a record of each of those levels of mind, is my understanding. BJ?
So yeah, two things I wanted to bring up. One, about the previous question about the balancing. There's some really good condensed or synthesized information in concept guide. There's a chapter on healer methodologies and principles, on healer program of training, and just on healing. So this is a really great resource. And reminder, or maybe not everybody knows, if you're local, you can check these out of our library. And then the other thing I wanted to say was just about the the guarding as well. I really appreciate that. I feel really connected to the mind, body, spirit complex totality, even though I don't really understand what it is. And yeah, just like that line really pinged for me, the information being guarded by the mind, body, spirit being totality, so that your present space-time experiences will be undiluted. And I just wanted to call that out. It felt really dear to me, the way that we're tended by that beingness. We're each tended by like some powerful beingness that is somehow also ourselves and the creator. Something. I just want to also share a cute thing that Aaron and I do, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course.
So once a week we have a specific earth honoring practice. And we just share gratitude for lots of different elements in our lives. And one of the things we often add into that practice is sharing gratitude for one another, our mind, body, spirit complex. So I say gratitude for Mu. And then I also say gratitude for Metamu, which is what we call his higher self. And then the All Mu, his mind, body, spirit complex totality. And then he does the same for me. And it's Chums, the Meta Chums, and the All Chums. You're welcome to use those nicknames as well.
If any of you have done any shadow work where you've gone back and related to your younger self who is hurt, and you feel the love for yourself, you feel the sweetness, just the automatic built-in like care that's there for your younger self. That's how I think of the higher self. I think the higher self is like, it's this incredibly, from our perspective, it's very future, very far in the future, but it's always with us. And I feel like it's got that same, my sense of our higher selves is it has that just like inherent like sense of care and love for us, and is always with us and always available as like an inner guru. I call it the inner guru because it's incredibly wise. It's a part of us that's been through, we're beyond the paradoxes at that point. It's beyond polarity. It's beyond time. It's where Ra is at. And we each have an individualized, tuned version of ourselves that's our future self that interacts with us a lot, in fact. It comes into our dreams. It helps modulate pre-incarnative programming. It helps us throughout our lives a lot in invisible ways, of course. And I think it's really potent to develop a relationship with that part of ourselves. I recommend it. Okay, let's move on to 9.4. Could someone else pick up from there?
I'll give it a shot. All right, so 9.4. Questioner. The way I understand the process of evolution of a planetary population is that a population has a certain amount of time to progress. This is generally divided into 3 25,000-year cycles. At the end of the 75,000 years, the planet progresses itself. What causes this situation to come about? The preciseness of the years, 25,000 years, etc. What set this up to begin with? Ra. I am Ra. Visualize, if you will, the particular energy which, outward flowing and inward coagulating, formed a tiny realm of the creation governed by your Council of Saturn. Continue seeing the rhythm of this process. The living flow creates a rhythm which is as inevitable as one of your timepieces. Each of your planetary entities began the first cycle when the energy nexus was able in that environment to support such mind-body experiences. Thus, each of your planetary entities is on a different cyclical schedule, as you might call it. The timing of these cycles is a measurement equal to a portion of intelligent energy. This intelligent energy offers a type of clock. The cycle moves as precisely as a clock strikes your hour. Thus, the gateway from intelligent energy to intelligent infinity opens regardless of the circumstance on the striking of the hour. Questioner. The first entities on this planet, what was their origin? Where were they before they were on this planet? I am Ra. The first entities upon this planet were water, fire, air, and earth. Questioner. The people that we now have, the first people like us, where did they come from? How did they evolve? I am Ra. You speak of third density experience. The first of those to come were brought from another planet in your solar system, called by you the red planet Mars. This planet's environment became inhospitable to third density beings. The first entities, therefore, were of this race, as you may call it, manipulated somewhat by those who were guardians at that time. What race is that, and how did they get from Mars to here? I am Ra. The race is a combination of mind, body, spirit complexes of those of your so-called red planet in a careful series of genetical adjustments made by the guardians of that time. These entities arrived or preserved for the experience upon your sphere by a type of birthing, which is non-reproductive, but consists of preparing genetic material for the incarnation of the mind, body, spirit complexes of those entities from the red planet. Then I'm assuming what you're saying is that the guardians transferred the race here after the race had died from the physical as we know it on Mars. Is that correct? I am Ra. This is correct. The guardians obviously were acting with an understanding of the law of one in doing this. Can you explain the application of the law of one in this process? I am Ra. The law of one was named by these guardians as bringing of the wisdom of the guardians in contact with the entities from the red planet, thus melding the social memory complex of the guardian race and the red planet race. It, however, took an increasing amount of distortion into the application of the law of one from the viewpoint of other guardians. And it is from this beginning action that the quarantine of this planet was instituted, for it was felt that the free will of those of the red planet had been abridged. Were these entities of the red planet following the law of one prior to leaving the red planet? The entities of the red planet were attempting to learn the laws of love from which one of the primal distortions of the law of one. However, the tendencies of these peoples towards bellicose action caused such difficulties in the atmospheric environment of their planet that it became inhospitable for third density experience before the end of its cycle. Thus, the red planet entities were unharvested and continued in your illusion to attempt to learn the law of love. How long ago did this transfer occur from the red planet to Earth? I am Ra. In your time, this transfer occurred approximately 75,000 years ago. 75,000 years ago? I am Ra. This is approximately correct. Were there any entities of this form that I am now, 2 arms, 2 legs, on this planet before this transfer occurred? I am Ra. There have been visitors to your sphere at various times in the last 4 million of your years, speaking approximately. These visitors do not affect the cycling of the planetary sphere. It was not third density in its environment until the time previously mentioned.
Great. That's perfect. Thanks, Neil. There's a small side note in that last sentence. Ra carefully enunciated the initial long E, thus the spelling effect instead of affect. I don't know exactly the significance of that, but Ra said, these visitors do not effect the cycling of the planetary sphere. So, the Mars mystery. I mean, y'all, this is fascinating and pretty impactful in my view, in terms of understanding Earth's dynamics, is what happened with Mars. Did any of you get to watch that YouTube video I shared this week about the remote viewing? So I shared this video of this CIA agent. You all probably know that the CIA had a remote viewing experiments for decades, and one of their remote viewers gives an interview and talks about this one session he remote viewed. He was given the coordinates on Mars, and he remote viewed it, and he talked in detail about what he saw there, and it's really interesting because a lot of it correlates with what Ra tells about Mars. So if you're interested in that, you can go check it out on the Telegram thread.
Currently, or was able to time travel into the past to
Into the past. In fact, he talks about it being 1 million years ago, which doesn't actually correspond with the timeline we're talking about here. But he said he was asked to go 1 million years in the past, go to Mars, three specific coordinates on Mars, and he describes what he saw. Enormous pyramids, like 9,000 feet tall pyramids, with spaces inside, and tall beings. But specifically, one of the things he said is he saw that it got destroyed, and that the atmosphere was destroyed. Specifically, he saw that, which is fascinating. BJ?
One of the pieces that I didn't get in my previous read-throughs was that the beings from Mars were the first third density beings on this planet. That shifts a lot of things for me. I think in previous read-throughs, the way it landed for me was that there were, sort of naturally evolved, like the way our scientists use the word evolve, right? Like Don says that, third density beings, and that the Mars race was then like implanted or whatever, like joined. But to read that the Mars beings were first, and to take that in like, okay, that changes some things. That's going to have a ripple effect in my understandings. And I think I did take in before the melding of the social memory complex of Guardian and Red Planet, but I didn't quite like grok that. And I think now I have kind of more access or purchase to that, and that was the dynamic that created the quarantine. That gives me a lot to chew on too. So yeah, I'm definitely like getting more of the picture from this study.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome, BJ. Neil?
So a couple things. I noticed on 9.10 that Ra does not say I am Ra when after Dawn asked that question. Just a little point that out. And then I've done a lot of the quote readings on Mars, and it seems like it was Yahweh that actually created that transfer, and they're still kind of with this planet like Ra because they've messed with the free will. And I believe, sorry, I'm blanking now. Yep, blanking. All right, I'll pass it on.
Well, let me hop on to that, Neil, because I wanted to say something about this too. I appreciate you brought that up. I was going to ask that of the group about Yahweh. You guys, this might be the biggest tangle. Like if I could point to one event in Earth's history, this whole Guardian, Yahweh, Mars transfer thing, I think actually may be the most significant impact on the entire evolution of Earth's third density. If I could name one event, I think it's that. And the way that this is still playing out, the way that the impact of that choice by that entity and everything that came after that is still playing out on the planet is epically profound. I mean, basically what's happening between Israel and Palestine is the outpicturing of that initial work. There's so much I could go into about this topic. It's a really big topic. We won't go all the way into it, but yes, it's also my understanding what Neil said, that this guardian was named Yahweh. Do you guys know who Yahweh is? Anyone know who Yahweh is? Who's Yahweh, May?
Well, so this is part of what I wanted to talk about. So, so there's a man whose name slips my mind right now, who has written a book called the Book of Enoch, and he calls Yahweh Yod-He Vod-He. That's how Yahweh is spoken in the Jewish language. But y'all, I'm seeing I'm getting chills. So I'm not certain that Yahweh is our friend. I'm not sure if Yahweh, so long story short, and how they say here that these entities were manipulated somewhat I think is a very generous way of saying it, somewhat by those who were guardians at that time. I think that Yahweh and the Anki, there's other names for these guardians, that they messed with the DNA of humans and really did a number on our genetics. And I have nothing offhand to back that up, but that's what I wanted to bring up for discussion.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's a lot here. So Yahweh is a biblical, you will read about Yahweh in the Bible. And Yahweh is the creator, the one infinite creator. Yahweh is the God. Yahweh is the ultimate God in the Bible. That's how I understand it. And that information alone is very impactful. To contrast the belief in a being as though this being is the ultimate source of power, versus the understanding that it's an evolving social memory complex. It's a high, it's our elder brothers and sisters. It's a very different thing. And then we'll get into this in the next, I don't know how soon it comes, but there's a whole teaching that Ra gives about there was an original Yahweh, and then the channel between Yahweh and Moses got hijacked by a false Yahweh, which was Orion. And then Yahweh reinvented themselves. The original Yahweh reinvented themselves, or gave themselves a new name and reestablished contact. So it is complex. It is not a simple story, but it's worth paying attention to, because in my estimation, it's still having a profound impact on Earth and all the humans on Earth. Scott.
Okay, yes, wow, there's a lot in here. I had two things, and one was, let's say plural guardians that manipulated the DNA. And that was, as we were reading it, that's the question that came up for me. Were there other groups, like, do we know who were the guardians at that time and how many different ones were? Because was the Orion group actually have a hand in that also? I think I may have heard that somewhere, and maybe even the Pleiadians, but it's just getting information from different places.
Yeah.
Listening over the years to quite a bit of Pleiadian stuff from especially Barbara Marciniak and different stuff, that like them saying that like their destiny is tied to our destiny, and that they've made some bad choices in the past or something about meddling in our affairs, or maybe specifically in DNA. So there's that. Okay, you were going to respond to that.
Yeah, I just want to see if I can respond by representing what Ra says. I mean, there's lots of people we all are in touch with that say different things about these dynamics. But I'll try to represent what Ra says. I believe what Ra says is that this initial Yahweh, or this initial guardian, they haven't been named yet. This initial guardian was very much coming from a positive place. They were attempting to aid the Mars entities. The Mars entities ruined their planet before harvest was complete. And then they were like, what? Then what? What's next in their evolutionary cycle? So this higher guardian race, the social memory complex, put forward a plan to the Council of Saturn. Well, they were part of the Council of Saturn, and then they decided to intervene, collect all the beings that were dead because they didn't have a planet that could support life, and then do this genetic manipulation, and bring them to Earth so they could continue in third density. My understanding is that they were very much coming from a positive place, that initial entity. They were trying to help. But what you see here in this session is that there was disagreement among the positive entities about whether or not that was a good idea or not. And some had felt that that was not respecting the free will. Now they don't really unpack it. We don't know if it was the entire idea of just giving them a new planet to cycle on, or if it was the actual manipulation of their genetics. You know, maybe it was just the manipulation of their genetics that some felt was an infringement. We don't really know. But this first being, and this is a little bit in response to what you were saying, May, was from what Rob represents, was very much coming from a loving place. This is a positively polarizing, group. And it wasn't until later that there was a negative Yahweh that called themselves Yahweh that was actually a Orion group that, quote unquote, is not our friends, although it's all the creator. So
The negative Yahweh was the one that talked to Moses, right?
right, and gave the 10 commandments. Thou shalt.
So and that was within the last 25,000 years. So does that imply most of the Old Testament was through the negative Yahweh?
That's my understanding. Yeah, the wrathful, jealous God.
Anytime you see the word sons of men, that is the negative Yahweh, the negative Orion group in the Bible. I didn't say that.
My other question.
Yeah.
Was the follow-up on what BJ was saying, because I'm a little confused, and I also didn't recollect that specific thing about 75,000 years was the first third density beings. And I'm wondering, okay, so according to the human science that Homo sapiens, for existence, emerged onto the planet 300,000 years ago. So does that mean they were second density? And yeah, I'm just wondering how that ties into the natural evolution of species on this planet.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, the timing of this whole thing is tremendously what's the word? It's quite a synchronicity, because what they're saying basically is just at the time when Mars through bellicose action made it such that their atmosphere could no longer support life, was right at the time where Earth was beginning its third density cycle. So it was just basically finally ripening and energetically providing the lessons of third density. Right at the time where the third density civilization of Mars needed a place to go. And it sounds like it preceded the natural evolution of second density entities on Earth by just a little bit. So they were the first 3D entities, but not by much.
And then subsequently there was interbreeding, yes?
Yeah. Well, yes. In the beginning, the soul groups, of which there were a number of them, were fairly dispersed on the surface of the planet, and there was not a lot of interaction between the different soul groups, is what Ross says. But then over time, there of course there was.
And I was referring specifically between the Mars entities that were transferred here and the native species.
Ah, gotcha. Negative species?
Native.
Native.
Or, Homo sapiens, or whatever the next stage was, and all that.
Right.
And our human, I don't know, maybe now I don't know which one I am or who I am.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, another thing that CIA fellow who gives the interview says is that he believes that we are actually descendants of Mars. It's his personal opinion on the matter, which, guess what? There's a lot of truth to that, although of course not the entire human population is that true for. And I'll just state my opinion, take it for what it's worth. This is just my opinion. I think that the naturally evolving second density entities that became native, the first native third density souls is the African tribes, the African origin. I think that's how I understand it. Okay, who's up? Sean?
I was gonna point out just something really small on 9.4. I remember like a couple sessions ago, we were trying to decide if the 25,000 cycle was universal, and it seems like 9.4 says it's not, because it says each of your planetary entities is on a different cyclical schedule. So I think that seems to imply that every planet has its own clock.
Yeah. That's a good, I appreciate you pointing that out, Sean. That intuitively feels right to me.
And I also wanted to like, we sort of talked about it already, but like, I don't like the Guardians. First of all, like Ra uses the word Guardians a lot, and it doesn't seem consistent to me. Like there are Guardians on the council, which I assume are not the same Guardians as the Guardians here, or are they? I don't know.
I have the exact same confusion. It seems like they use Guardians in at least 2 distinct ways, if not 3. One way they use Guardians is the ones who show up for the harvest process come from the next octave. They call them Guardians, and they come from the next octave, and they provide the light. They're the ones who provide the light that we walk towards until we until we found what's comfortable. And that's not the kind of Guardian we're talking about here, I don't think, because this is a social memory complex, which wouldn't be from the next octave. It doesn't seem like. So those seem like distinct concepts. And I have the same confusion as you, Sean, about that.
And
so just use context clues for that. Just be aware of that difference. And then as you read the material, just try to use the context clues and be aware of that difference.
And I wonder why their free will was abridged. Like, I guess we don't know. I don't know if there's a way to know. Like, they helped, but I mean, we already talked about it. Like, we don't know.
Well, they admit that they made some errors, and they made some mistakes in interfering. So maybe they say, whoops, we interfered with their free will.
But Ra also interfered, right? Ra came. Like, does that mean Ra also? But so the actions of Yahweh were bad enough where it caused quarantine, I guess. Like what what did they do to make it that like everyone's like, no one's touching this planet ever again? Like that seems like, I don't know, like that seems like a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, was something that Ra did also on that level? I know Ra screwed up. Ra's probably like the source of like all our secret societies.
I do think there's truth to that. I do think that there is very much truth to that. The whole quarantine thing is huge. It must have profound implications for Earth's experience. And the purpose, as I understand it, of the quarantine is its purpose is to guard the free will of the evolving third density entities on the planet. So it suggests that there are third density planets who have no quarantine, and there's much more fluidity of contact from higher density beings to be able to come and go from the planet. But when there's a quarantine, that's not allowed. There's some literal metaphysical barrier put up where entities can't just come and land. Although they can, because there's holes in it that appear at in a random way. So it's very complex, y'all. It's really fascinating. And it's complex. And I think it's really good to lean into these questions and try to grok it and understand what's going on here.
It's really too bad that we don't have the full story, because it would, I think, set some of our minds and hearts at ease.
It may, and it may also have unintended consequences. Like, remember the law of confusion. To be confused allows us to, have a very wide range of options available to us, because we don't know what really is going on, and we don't know who we are, and we don't know what really happened. And that confusion actually is in a way a gift. It allows us to have to call upon our essence and really know who we are, really know what we're made of, and wander through this confusion and draw on what's the truest thing inside of us. And that's how we evolve, by strengthening that.
That's
I
how
think
I know
that
I'm
also-
in the right group. Sorry.
Mm.
I'm sorry. That's how I know I'm in the right group. What you just said, Aaron. It's like, against all odds, we can do this. We can call on the highest levels and reach in. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all right.
I think the law of confusion specifically on this planet is part of what makes it such a powerful learning environment, because the choosing has to be that much stronger. And it's so easy to fall into the sinkhole of indifference. But if you don't on this planet, at least I think, it's like the weight is that much heavier to lift, and we can get that much stronger in our evolution and in our choosing.
I believe Ross says at one point, one lifetime on Earth, one incarnation on Earth, for a wandering soul, you can get as much evolutionary work done in one lifetime on Earth as would take millions of years, literally millions of years in sixth density. Because as sixth density, there is no veil, everything's known, everything is incredibly subtle. All the lessons are very, very subtle. And when you come back to Earth, it's not subtle. It's like, it's a mixed environment planet. There's like, yeah, there's such a strong capacity to be able to build on our essence here. Anyway,
I want to just chime in a little bit more. This reminds me of the metaphor of the playing cards, which I'll find that. Maybe not everyone's read that, but it's in the material. It's like the game that we're playing, you can't see anyone else's cards. And that's what makes it such a powerful game. Like, otherwise you can see everyone's cards and then you know how to play the game. But this game is so powerful because you can't see anyone else's cards. And if you still choose love and you still choose faith, so let's do this. Let's do this, y'all.
Actually, I have that saved if you want me to post it.
Yeah, Neil.
Hey, Aaron.
yes.
Did the text specifically say that the Mars destruction happened like right before 75,000 years?
No,
Are they coordinated? Could
it
it
doesn't.
be?
It's possible that it happened earlier, and then they just went into some sort of stasis until Earth started cycling in third density. I've thought about that.
Because I imagine like time is different in the higher densities, right?
Yes.
Like you could. I always wondered if you could incarnate into the past, like, because time is, I don't know, time doesn't exist, right? Time is
Yes, you
just some
can.
coordinate system. So I wonder if like I don't know if I missed it. I don't know if they specifically said Mars was 75,000 years ago that destruction happened, or it happened at some point in the past and just plopped them conveniently when Earth started its third density cycle.
Well, I've read with that question in mind. I've read for the answer, and from what I read, it doesn't clarify that question. It seems to suggest that it happened 75,000 years ago, but if you read carefully, the transfer happened 75,000 years ago, but they don't really say when the planet became uninhabitable. So, yeah. Scott, did you have a question?
No, I just forgot to lower my hand.
Okay, that's okay. That's fine. One other thing I wanted to point out, I don't know how many of you here are are reading through The Secret of Light, but there's a big crossover here. When Ra is describing the 25,000 year cycle of harvest, in 9.4, they say, visualize, if you will, the particular energy which, outward flowing and inward coagulating, formed the tiny realm of the creation governed by your council of Saturn. The way that I read that is we're talking about our solar system. And this is exactly how Walter Russell describes the creation of solar systems and all systems of light, is the outward flow and the inward flow of energy. Intelligent energy has two sides, light, and dark light, positively charging and negatively charging light. And they inward flow and outward flow simultaneously. And I really just get a strong sense that they're describing the phenomenon. It's the exact same phenomenon that Walter Russell describes. Outward flowing and inward coagulating, and specifically coagulating. That's how matter forms and suns and bodies form, like the coagulation of intelligent energy. May?
Yeah, I'm glad you're picking up on that. That's exactly what I thought too. And I was awestruck at the fact of the idea that not only do we go through that pulsation ourselves, but an entire galaxy can do it. Like, I don't know. I guess, it makes sense, but it makes me wonder then if the galaxy is doing that, then at what rate and how does that affect our rate of our own transmutation of that energy? Yeah, pretty profound.
Yeah, totally profound. And one more little piece about this, Walter Russell talks about the universal heartbeat, and everything is rhythmic, balanced interchange. And there is one heartbeat. There is one sort of master breath, in breath and out breath. And that's the primal logos. Ra would call that the primal logos. That's the birth. That's the one that births the universe. And then all the galactic logoi are geared to that logos. And then all the suns of each of those galaxies are geared to their galaxies. And the planets are geared to the sun, and we're geared to the sun and the planets and everything. It's all the rhythms interlock and intersect. Like there's all these intersecting rhythms and breaths, and that's this clock phenomenon that Ra is talking about. It's measurable, it's mathematical, it's knowable. Pretty cool. Any other questions or comments on this, what we just read? Oh, shoot. We are burning through our time together. Let's keep reading. Where did we leave off? Let's see. 9 point. 15, I believe. I will go ahead and read. Questioner, did any of these second density entities have shapes like ours, 2 arms, 2 legs, head, and walk upright on 2 feet? Ra, I am Ra. The 2 higher of the sub-vibrational levels of second density beings had the configuration of the biped, as you mentioned. However, the erectile movement which you experience was not totally effected in these beings who were tending toward the leaning forward, barely leaving the quadrupedal position. Questioner, where do these beings come from? Were they a product of evolution as it is understood by our scientists? Were they evolved from the original material of the earth that you spoke of? I am Ra, this is correct. Questioner, do these beings then evolve from second density to third density? I am Ra, this is correct. Although no guarantee can be made of the number of cycles it will take an entity to learn the lessons of consciousness of self, which are the prerequisite for transition to third density. Questioner, is there any particular race of people on our planet now who were incarnated here from second density? I am Ra. There are no second density consciousness complexes here on your sphere at this time. However, there are 2 races which use the second density form. One is the entities of the planetary sphere you call Maldek. These entities are working their understanding complexes through a series of what you would call karmic restitutions. They dwell within your deep underground passageways and are known to you as Bigfoot. The other race is that being offered a dwelling in this density by guardians who wish to give the mind-body-spirit complexes of those who are of this density at this time the appropriately engineered physical vehicles, as you would call these chemical complexes, in the event that there is what you call nuclear war. Questioner, I didn't understand what these vehicles or beings were for that were appropriate in the event of nuclear war. I am Ra. These are beings which exist as instinctual second density beings, which are held in reserve to form what you would call a gene pool in case these body complexes are needed. These body complexes are greatly able to withstand the rigors of radiation, which the body complexes you now inhabit could not do. Questioner, where are these body complexes located? I am Ra. These body complexes of the second race dwell in uninhabited deep forest. There are many in various places over the surface of your planet. Questioner, are they Bigfoot type creatures? I am Ra. This is correct, although we would not call these Bigfoot, as they are scarce and very able to escape detection. The first race is less able to be aware of proximity of other mind-body-spirit complexes, but these beings are very able to escape due to their technological understandings before their incarnations here. These entities of the glowing eyes are the most familiar to your peoples. Questioner, then there are two different types of Bigfoot, correct? I am Ra. This will be the final question. There are three types of Bigfoot, if you will accept that vibratory sound complex used for three such different races of mind-body-spirit complexes. The first two we have described. The third is a thought form. Questioner, we plan to do a second session later today if the instrument is capable, and I'd like to ask if there's anything we can do to aid the instrument's comfort. I am Ra. This instrument will require some adjustment of the tender portions of her body complex. The distortions are due to the energy center blockage you would call pineal. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one creator, Adonai.
Wow.
I know, right? The floor is open.
I have a question.
Yeah.
918. Is there any particular race of people on our planet now who were incarnated here from second density? What is? I feel like there's a disconnect, or maybe my interpretation of what Dawn is asking is like, did the natural animals from second density, like basically the apes, or whatever, convert to their density?
Yes.
That's how I interpreted that.
That's how I interpreted too. And then Ra doesn't answer that question, answers a different question.
Okay,
And their answer is incredibly like, what? What is, there are no second density consciousness complexes? What is that? That was confusing to me too.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any insight about what they might mean about that? What is a second density consciousness complex, if not second density entity?
I'm just wondering if they're using that terminology interchangeably.
Or
Yeah,
maybe
they
it's a
Stood out to
platform.
me. What stood out to me was maybe like in 919, these are beings which exist as instinctual second density beings, and maybe that's the differentiator between a consciousness complex and an instinctual being. I don't know, but that's what I was wondering. And then Kent has his hand raised too.
Yep. Kent.
Yeah, PJ, maybe this is what you meant. Same thing as I was going to say. So animal second density entities, I understand, they don't have an individual mind, body, spirit complex. When they go back after they die, they go back and merge with their species collective soul, so to speak. So a second density consciousness complex, I'm guessing, is they have actually individuated, second density entities that have actually individuated, as opposed to not being individuated.
Yeah,
that's my take on it.
I mean, that would make sense in the context of this Q&A. That would make sense. Yeah.
But I also agree with what Shang said about Don's question. I think Ram misunderstood the question.
I think so too. And just to clarify, we do get insight into the answer to this question in another session. And Ra describes that when third density began cycling on Earth, half of the souls were from Mars. A quarter of the souls were were basically repeaters from other third density planets who went through harvest, and they didn't harvest to fourth densities. They needed a different planet, so they came to Earth. And then the other quarter is native. So they're souls that evolved from second density ape, beings into third density native Earth, third density entities.
That makes sense to me.
There's another thing that caught my eye, which is 917. Like, there's no guarantee how long it takes for evolution to make their density beings, which makes me wonder, like, does that mean, like, if every planet in the galaxy or universe, whatever, is on a clock, does that imply like maybe they'll beat their density time and there's not going to be any third density creatures?
Well, what that brings up for me, Shong, is that what we know is that once fourth density Earth begins cycling, there still is first and second density life evolving. So it's like second density entities can kind of make it's not the same dynamic as third density. There aren't these windows, these isolated windows of when second density can evolve to third. I think it can happen anytime. That's kind of how I take that. It can happen anytime during second density. It can happen during third density. Like, we know that there are, pets that are evolving and becoming third density entities now, like, in real time, like while we're interacting with them. And then when fourth density is in full swing, there still will be second density. And of course, the purpose of that is so they can evolve and become self-aware during fourth density. And who knows how long that goes on.
But during fourth density, wasn't there something about it not being helpful for the earlier parts of third density, or no?
Right. Well, third density is going to go out of potentiation for a little while, but first and second density will attend fourth density. They'll all be blended. So there still will be first and second density.
So then if a second density graduates to third during the fourth density part, do they go somewhere else, or?
I mean, they go to the same place in time space of the souls that are that are basically like waiting for the next third density cycle to begin. Where is that? I don't know.
Or maybe they incarnate somewhere else.
Maybe, but Ross says at one point that when harvest is complete here now on Earth, it's not just the beings who are incarnating actively who go through that process. There's a lot of souls who had incarnations earlier in third density, but the competition for bodies got so high that they couldn't get in. And so they've just been waiting in some place in Earth's like inner spheres for harvest, and then they get to go through harvest, but they've not been able to incarnate. So they haven't been like actively incarnating in third density. So they're waiting. There's some waiting room. I mean, I really think that there's some inner plane of Earth where the souls just hang out and wait until their next shot to get in. Farrellyn?
I like how the 25,000 year cycles show the relativity of time, because I guess every planet has a sun to revolve around, and that is their year. It's all like Earth's year is different than a Mars year. So any planet has a relative 25,000. And then yet 25,000 is not a random number. Apparently it's universal for any planetary system, for any solar system. That's kind of perplexity for me. But what do you think the significance is? Did they just have to pick 70? We're gonna do 3 times 25 equals 75. Why that number? It doesn't matter.
Shong just took a pass at addressing that, and I tend to sort of feel in agreement with what he's saying, which is maybe the 25,000 year period is not universal to every planet. Maybe it's specific to Earth. and each planet's cycling depending on how close it is to its star and how mature it is. You know, it may have a different harvest
Okay.
period.
I thought they might have
Yeah.
said that. Rob might have said that, but anyway, it's a relative number. And do you think that every planet has a sun to go around? I mean, I like going back to, I don't want any suppositions or any, I like to think, does every planet cycle around a sun? Is that what we're talking about in the whole universe? That's the way it works.
That's what I would say. Just in the same way as like, does every star have a galaxy that it belongs to? I think that the master logos of the sublogos is actually the source of power for that sphere.
Yeah.
So like the sun charges the earth. All the earth's like heat and capacity to hold life comes from the sun. Without the sun, it couldn't, I don't think it could support evolving life. That's my take.
And a lot of times the matter that creates planets comes from the sun. It gets
Correct.
thrown out from the sun and then reabsorbed. I just kind of wanted to sum that up as like a universal constant. Okay.
Great questions, Farrellyn. Those are great questions. Anyone else got anything they want to say or ask?
What are the entities of the glowing eyes?
That's a fascinating question and topic. It sounds like,
was it not Bigfoot? Like some people see Bigfoot with glowing eyes or something.
Some of the Bigfoot have glowing eyes. They're like a distinct species or something. My understanding.
Yeah, you can look it up. You can research it. Yeah.
Well, what Ross seems to say about this Bigfoot matter is that there's 3 types. The first type is the Maldek souls, the remnants of the Maldek race, who voluntarily were incarnated into second density bodies, even though they were third density souls. And they did that in order to like work off the karma from their bellicose actions that blew up their planet. That's the first type. The second type is basically installed here as a sort of like a biological bank in case there's nuclear war. Some group, whether some social memory complex or some set of guardians, brought this like this second density these entities who are able to sort of like avoid detection, and their bodies can withstand high radiation levels. So in case there's a nuclear war, there'd be a lot of death, but their souls would be able to like come into, I guess, start incarnating into these second type of big feet, who are then able to like withstand the radiation. How crazy is that? How wild. And then the third type is the thought form, which basically I take to mean, because the idea of Bigfoot has become so prominent in the collective mind of humanity, then people will basically create their own, sightings.
Yeah. Or it becomes like an egregore. Do you know that term, egregore?
Oh yeah, egregore. Yeah, right.
Collective reality.
Exactly. That's right.
Starting to materialize in the social complex.
That's right. Exactly. I think that's exactly what we're talking about here. May?
So the second group of Bigfoot, that makes them soul seed banks for the future.
Yeah.
That's hysterical.
Totally. Fascinating. Well, obviously the social memory complexes, the Confederation entities who are here attending Earth and trying to help, are well aware of the destructive capacities of third density civilizations, and well aware of specifically the dangers of nuclear weaponry, and are well aware that Earth has developed that capability and are doing everything they can to try to like help us make it through.
I have a quick question. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, not to mention the weaponry that they mentioned in the last. There's a psychotropic and then the other, I can't remember the word for it, but even more powerful than the nuclear, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, destructive on a different level. I don't know if it's more powerful in terms of planetary destruction, but yeah.
For thought form, does thought just so I understand thought form, that's like you see something, but it's not physical. It's just a thought. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was a discussion about this on the thread. Diana has, I think, an incredibly impactful, positively impactful insight into this. She thinks that thought form should have a slash in between them, like teach learn. And so a thought form would be, it's a long discussion, but yeah, a thought form is, I think in this context, something that we see as though it's a form we can perceive with our senses, but actually was generated from thought directly, rather than like through a natural evolutionary cycle.
So
process.
that means
And it
like
may-
it could exist on the mental plane, but not necessarily on the physical plane.
Well, it can come directly from a mental plane into physical,
Mhm.
directly
like
manifested.
fear from the collective. That, you know, any kind of fear can form a thought. Now I'm not saying what I want to say. Fear can be a thought form and can manifest itself in various ways. That's what I'm trying to say.
I mean, Ra's creation of the pyramids, remember, they took 2,600 years, they perfected the thought of the pyramids, and then it was created in overnight. It's created in an instant. That was a thought form. That was like one example of a thought form, probably the most, whatever, profound on our planet that we
And
know.
long lasting, very long
Yeah.
lasting.
Right, exactly. Kent?
Yeah, I've always wondered if the first form of Bigfoot that they describe are actually simply Neanderthals or descendants of Neanderthals. I could be way off there, but I mean, that's something I've always wondered about.
It might be, but they did talk about how the big feet are the remnants of, at one point they talked about how they're remnants of the Maldek.
Right. Yeah, but they don't have the Maldek bodies. So the Neanderthal bodies could have been inhabited by the Maldek entities' consciousness.
Yeah.
As they moved,
Right.
Because obviously the Maldek bodies were third density bodies, and the Bigfoot bodies are second density.
Right.
So
yeah, could be, totally could be.
Right. Just speculation. But
Well, friends, we are a little bit past our time, so I'm going to call it, but we made it through the session and it was juicy, and I love this experience of traveling through it together. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for your bright smiles and insights.
Nice to meet you, Valerie.
Love y'all.
You too.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks for giving us Scott, Valerie.
What?
Thanks for giving us Scott.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Well done, well done.
Guess I was freely given.
Yes, you were. Well, yes, you were.
Love
Cool
y'all.
stuff. Cool stuff. See you next time.
See you next Sunday.
Yep. See you next Sunday. Bye, everyone.
Bye.